afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to In the Zone. We are really, really happy to have Pete back from his hiatus, his vacation down in Nashville. How was it, Pete?
Had a great time. We went to the area of Dollywood in Pigeon Forge.
Beautiful, beautiful. Weather in Westfield is unbelievable. For the last 2 weeks, it's been incredible. We got another absolutely beautiful end of summer day in New England. Totally excited about the weather. Been hitting the golf course a little bit and doing some different things. So that's a really, New England in September is a really cool time. So we're going to start off, Pete, in our NBA fish, and we had on Chris LaPlaca a while back as a guest, and it was a great, great show when we had Chris on. And Chris had talked about a moment in his career where they had to just totally scramble, jumble things around, and then on the fly just had to absolutely just kind of go with it and make it run, at different times in his career. And he pointed to a couple of instances of that. And obviously I could understand what it meant, but not until we got the Woj bomb yesterday did I really, truly, fully get the journalist side of that, because I will be full disclosure. When I was in college, I never got a paper done a day before it was due. The night of the time that it was due is when I began working on my paper. The absolute last hour, it might have been actually into that day, because sometimes it was after midnight that I started to type. Okay? Full disclosure. Now, within the zone, this is what I like. This is what I like to do. So I have my stuff prepped, ready to go, usually a good bit before Wednesday, because we come on Thursday. I like to get ready, look at it, make sure I know what I'm talking about, which isn't always easy. And then all of a sudden, yesterday, we get the Woj bomb. Woj bombs himself almost. And it was funny that he made an announcement. Adrian Wojnarowski, the NBA guru, announced that he would no longer be working in the NBA realm in ESPN with Yahoo Sports, and was going to, and this is very, very exciting, folks, return to St. Bonaventure in the role of general manager for sports. And he is going to help with the NIL arrangements that they have at the university. And I think the university should be very, very excited about that. And we're going to talk a little bit about Woj right here, in that he had an unbelievable career as he moved up. And it just shows that sometimes in your career, you might not know where you're going to wind up, but you're doing it 100%, 110% of the way, and people notice. People take notice of that. And so this is what happened with Woj as well. He grew up in Bristol, Connecticut, which was funny that he wound up working for ESPN. Probably could imagine that would be an absolute childhood dream, to have right there. Started out with the Hartford Courant, worked for the Fresno Bee, worked for the Bergen Record, came up, and those are not exactly papers that jump off the lips of everybody. I know them well, but he paid his dues and came up the right way and learned the trade, learned his craft, and became really, really good at what he did. Then concluding his career with ESPN as the absolute NBA guru, the absolute go-to guy on anything that went on in the NBA. I mean, it got a little ridiculous at times, because everything that came out of the NBA had Woj attached to it. So a great, great credit to Adrian. What a great career. He was the columnist of the year in 97 and 2002 by the Associated Press, which is a pretty big deal. He also wrote a book called, and it's a good one, folks. If you go back, it's a little bit of an older edition now, but I'm sure you can find it. It's a really good book called The Miracle of St. Anthony, and it's a detail about Bobby Hurley and how he single-handedly kept that school open, kept that basketball program alive, and turned out unbelievable players who were able to go on and play at the highest levels of Division I and also in the NBA. So The Miracle of St. Anthony, it's a great, great, great book. Okay, so Woj is going to go back. This is the one piece that I wanted to talk about. Just recently, St. Bonaventure hired a new athletic director by the name of Bob Beretta. Bob Beretta was not a classmate of mine, but was at Bonaventure the same time I was. He was a baseball player. And so we didn't really cross paths a lot, but I did know I did know of him. He had most recently been the athletic director at Lemoyne. And so St. Bonaventure made an offer to Bob Beretta to come home. And now you see Woj giving up a career with ESPN Yahoo Sports, and going home. And what they're going home to is St. Bonaventure. And when we talk about this as a special place on our show, we talk about it to the young students here as well that are starting to make that college decision. Take a really good look at this place because it's transformational. Take a really good look at this place because it can change your life for the better. And you look at some of the people that are now going home. You know, why would Woj want to go back and be a general manager? You know, I couldn't even tell you the amount of pay that got cut out of his check right now. But it's something that he feels passionately about and strongly about, and has always held a deep and abiding affection for St. Bonaventure. Our President Jeff Gingerich right now, our board of trustees, two fellows I know, Mike Hickey, Ed Evans, all of you prospective students out there, take a look at what's going on right now at St. Bonaventure. Take a look at the really bright future that's up there. But Woj was unbelievable. It speaks volumes. It speaks volumes about what's happening at St. Bonaventure as well, but also to the great tradition of transformation at that wonderful campus. The general manager role is something that is now Duke University men's basketball, I believe, and we could check this out, but I believe they were the first to hire a general manager. And the general manager is going to be charged with accumulating, collecting, I'm not sure about the distribution part, but the NIL funds that these schools are having. The general manager is going to be directly involved in bringing in NIL dollars, stewarding the NIL dollars that they have, and trying to stretch their NIL dollars, I'm sure, at St. Bonaventure and other places like this. I think.
But it also shows you how important that NIL thing now is in college basketball. The fact that they're hiring people just to manage that program.
Well, what I always say, and I say this about our campus as well, too, watch for the build-out. You know, they think, oh, well, we just hired a person. And I say, no, wait for the build-out. The build-out that comes around it is unbelievable. You know, I'm looking for this thing in my papers right here now because I wanted to give you a connection to it right now. And the thing that I had here was, I just found it, thankfully, is in Tennessee, they're no longer volunteers. Okay, they were Tennessee Volunteers for a long time. They're no longer volunteers. They just hung 10% increase on all the tickets that are going to be sold in order to pay for NIL. This is getting passed off. You know, the first thing is to get every free dollar that you can possibly get. That's going outside, going to businesses, going to different donors who are going to fund your NIL on that side. And then on this side now, when they can't get to any other dollars that they can find, they start with the taxation. And here it comes. There's going to be 10% nut on each ticket that's sold, season tickets, all the way through the whole thing, especially in the football program, and it's called a talent fee. A talent fee. Now, Tennessee has a talent fee. It's unbelievable. It makes you feel invested, I think, if they say it that way.
Sure.
But the other thing, too, is they have like a pilot logo on their field already. They've sold every inch of the place. And now, you know, they're just getting to the taxation part. This is, you know, like as good of government-run stuff as you can see. What's left to sell? It's unbelievable. All right, Pete, I asked if we could jump into our first of the year. We're going to do a quick preseason Super 15 in the NBA. Pete running around like crazy today, got all sorts of stuff going on, but said he'd have it for us, and there it is, folks. Our first one of the year. Absolutely cool. I like these two things we're going to do back-to-back right here. We do an NBA Power 15, and we do a 25 in the college ranks, a Super 25, we call it. But absolutely fabulous. Pete's a killer with the graphics, and we're just improving every single day on this show, and I love it. So we're going to go with the Celtics in number one. Absolutely no question there. In my mind, the only question is, can somebody get them? And I think the year before, when we look at the number two team, the Denver Nuggets, everybody was saying, can anybody catch the Nuggets? And then they got caught by the Celtics and other teams as well over on the Western Conference because the Mavs were the representative and they lost to the Celtics. So you have the Celtics now in that question, in that big question mark with that big target on the back. Can they do the repeat? Can they go bounce back to back? So we'll have to see. And I think it'll be interesting, but it's certainly a great storyline to watch. I'm going to go with the Nuggets in number two spot. And the reason for that is I thought they got clipped with some injuries last year, literally, and I think they'll be able to respond this year. They have a very good lineup. They've got a good coaching staff. I think they'll bounce back. Part of that is the number 3 team there, the OKC Thunder. I'm just not ready to buy into all of it just yet. I think they're going to be good. They were great last year. They were tied for number 1 record, no question, but they tied with the Denver Nuggets. I don't see a lot of upward movement in their direction, meaning I don't see a lot of teams that could challenge them, where you might see a little bit more upward mobility in the Eastern Conference. I don't see a lot of it in the West. Minnesota Timberwolves at number 4, there's a chance for some mobility. They could rise. The Knicks in the 5 spot and the 76ers in the 6 spot, this is going to be a tussle all year long in the Eastern Conference. The Eastern Conference just got beefed up. The Eastern Conference just took a beef shot of steroid because the Celtics are really, really good. And I think Baylor Shearman at some point during the year is going to be able to help them as a young rookie. But now the Knicks adding Mikal Bridges, the 76ers have brought in Andre Drummond and have brought in Paul George, the great wing. So I think they're really cooking with gasoline. That's why I go 5 and 6 there. I think that's going to turn into a real battle royale this year between those 2 teams, because I don't know if they have enough to catch the Celtics. Maybe. We'll see. The Mavericks in the 7th spot, we gave them their due, but again, they had a run last year with Kyrie and with Luka. I just think it's going to be difficult to duplicate that this year in the West. I think there's other teams in the West that'll now be looking at them in a different way, gunning for them, and I don't know that they can get back there where they were, especially with the roster that they have. But look for Derek Lively to improve around Luka. Look for some of their young talent to improve and get better, but they just don't have enough, and that was proven against the Celtics. Milwaukee Bucks, I had them here in 8, and I could slide them out of the top 15 very quickly. If anything happens to Antetokounmpo, anything could go wrong with that team right now. There could be a big slide because they just don't have the talent that they once had. Dame Lillard is a mercurial scorer, but that's exactly what we talk about in the zone during that trade. A lot of people looked on that trade and said, oh, they're getting Dame Lillard and they're giving up Jrue Holiday. That's great. You know, they're going to be able to go with him. And no, they lost so much when they traded Holloway. It was a tremendous, tremendous loss for the program. I think a lot of it's similar to when Phoenix lost DeAndre Ayton, you know, and they brought in somebody who's on the wing, you know, Bradley Beal, who's, you know, a wing player. When they had Michael Booker, I didn't get it. But I think there's some of that going down. Cleveland Cavaliers, you know, they got the big D. They got some good players. They're going to be solid, but they're going to have to really play well to maintain because they don't have a great roster. Indiana Pacers, I think I could move them a little higher, but again, they don't have great talent. Pascal Siakam, Tyrese Halliburton, but there's some gaps there. But if you're going to get 31 open looks a game and everybody else is getting 21, I think they're going to be in a playoff hunt. Phoenix Suns in the 11th spot, another team, Pete, I swear this team could just fall off into oblivion. If Durant gets hurt, they just don't have a lot of pieces around here, and there's some real question marks in my mind about this team. Maybe, you know, some of the pickups they made in the offseason can help. I don't know. The Lakers in the 12th spot, Orlando Magic in the 13th spot. The Lakers got to be close to LeBron's last hurrah.
Are you being gracious with the Lakers at 12?
No, because I think that's kind of where they finished last year.
Okay.
You know, with us. And if you looked at the standings and look where they are, I'd want to see a reason to drop them lower, and I didn't really see a reason to drop them lower like I do with the Clippers, like where we were high on the Clippers last year, even though we thought they were a little crazy. You know, with their team, that team's completely blown up right now, and I wouldn't put them in the top 15 right now. They could prove us wrong, but James Harden is the only real player that stayed through all of that stuff, and he once had a loaded roster, and it's now been blown to pieces. You know, Kawhi is still there. We'll see. But again, the Lakers have LeBron James. The Lakers have Anthony Davis. Those are two of arguably the best 25 players in the game. There are other pieces that have been there, and if they were still there, this team would be really, really good. But for some reason, they get run out of there. Pascal Siakam was with the Lakers. You know, they had some really, really good players there, and they just, for some reason, let them roll out the door. Orlando Magic, I'm going with these two at the end here, Pete, just see how they develop, but I'm going to go with it. I think the Houston Rockets, with Ime Udoka as their coach, are going to be able to push through. You see, I don't have the Golden State Warriors here because I just don't see them having it, and they lost Klay Thompson. I didn't see a whole lot of any movement to try and fill the gap that was created there. And the Memphis Grizzlies, very high on Zach Edey as Rookie of the Year. And they bring back Ja Morant, who is one of the great talents in the game. Pete, beautiful. Quick 15. All right, we're going to run right into the Super 25. If you have it, NCAA, we'll clip and we'll go. Beautiful. Until somebody knocks them off, Pete, I think we've been clear about that. But I also feel pretty strongly about this Houston team because I think that they have to get knocked off as well. They have been dominant over the longer time period than any team right now, and they've done a great job with Kelvin Sampson, have a really good team returning, and they seem to be able to just reload even though they're now sending good amount of players to the NBA. But I like Connecticut. We're going to keep them there, but watch this Houston team, and number 3 spot, we're going to slide Gonzaga in there. Gonzaga is going to be very difficult to beat out west this year. They could get scuffed up early in the preseason in some of these tournaments. I know they have a big matchup with UConn in the Garden, but I think Gonzaga is going to be a team that's going to be able to elevate, stay away from people, because I don't see them losing. I see the same thing occurring with UConn as when UConn gets into their league season in the Big East, they're going to be able to run away from every single team there.
You just want to say Gonzaga all season.
I love Gonzaga, but honestly, Pete, we have done our homework, and this is the best roster he's had in a while.
Yeah.
This is one of the best rosters he's had in a while, and he's a great coach. Love him. And I think they do it the right way out there. Alabama in the 4 spot. Mark Sears, one of the best guards back. You would talk about him and R.J. Davis in the conversation as Player of the Year. We did. And I think he'll have a chance to do it. He averaged over 20 points a game last year. He's coming back to a team that adds Cliff Amorie from Rutgers. They have Grant Nelson still. They have some really good pieces on this Alabama team. Watch out for them. They're going to be loaded. Iowa State, folks, the Cyclones, I think they're just so isolated and they're out of the major market that people don't realize what's going on there. This is one of the best teams in the country for the last couple of years. Tameen Lipsey is back. They have a really, really good core of returning players. And what we're going to show you, although we didn't include Iowa State a little bit later in the show, we're going to go through our metrics, our RSS metrics that we claim here and say, okay, here's who has what departed in points in total. Here has what returning in points total. And if you go back to last year's show, when we did that, that was like almost prophecy. We told you Notre Dame was going to have a really, really difficult year because they lost like 60 points and returned like 4. And there's some of those anomalies out there this year. And my take on this, okay, and this is something just from me to everybody else, and you can take it for what it's worth. I think if you got to constantly reload these numbers, you're losing 65 and you're retaining 18. I think if you constantly have to reload those numbers, there's no possible way to do that through the transfer portal and NIL and keep your product as good as it once was. I've said this all along. Stay with program integrity, folks. Stay with the integrity of your program. Build your classes. Build your whole culture, and then you'll be able to stand on that and have something to stand on. Because if they say, as they say in the old days, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. All right, let's keep rolling here. Kansas, Baylor, 2 great ones. Baylor could be higher, Pete. I'm telling everybody about this team right now. They are loaded. I think one of the only things that could hold them down is I think Coach Drew might have been an advanced scout for General Custer at one point because he's got a lot of little bighorns on his schedule right here. He's rocking and rolling. Arizona, we talked about this a little bit in the last show. They're out in the West. They got it to themselves almost out there. UCLA, Arizona, USC, because all of those other teams are now moving into the ACC, into some other conferences, and they're going to see how that gets impacted. Remember when UConn was in the AAC, folks? Remember the day that UConn was in the AAC and what happened to their basketball program. They came back to the Big East, and now they've won back-to-back championships. But remember the day they were in the AAC. That's very, very comparable. Kansas is loaded, but those 2 injuries they took last week are not going to be good. Not going to be good. They're really going to have some issues with depth on that, but they still have a very good lineup. I want to see Hunter Dickinson produce at a little bit better clip in some big games this year. I want to see that. I know they gave him an awful lot of NIL money early on. I just would like to see something better out of that whole thing. North Carolina and Duke, Pete, you know I love to hang them 9 and 10 because those people don't like each other. And when they hear 9 and 10, wait, we're 10. No, we're not. And we're going. They're going to start fighting over anything. And so this is really, really something that was a difficult one to pick. The reason I picked North Carolina is because they have better returning numbers right now. Everybody's excited about Cooper Flagg, about their incoming freshman class. Everybody's excited about that. But when we go over the ACC numbers and you see Duke's differential, you're going to see why it's going to be really difficult for them to be a nationally ranked powerhouse team because their program integrity has been disrupted. For whatever reason, I wouldn't even begin to try and conjecture on that. But for whatever reason, they've kind of fallen off the pace there a little bit. Although they're recruiting like crazy, the amount of people they lost last year was staggering. So I'm going to go North Carolina, Duke, 9 and 10. This team could move up. Auburn, they have the Broom, Johnny Broom, but I don't know that they've got a whole lot. I think they have some guard weakness that I'm a little concerned about there. Bruce Pearl's a very good coach. I'm sure he'll be able to cover up any weaknesses that they have. Tennessee loses Dalton Connect to the Lakers, but I think they're going to be right back there too. Coach Barnes is just fabulous. And, you're looking at him and Bruce Pearl right there. Boom, boom. Those are 2 unbelievable SEC coaches, and that league is going to be off the hook this year. Texas A&M, we're going to call it early. It's a buzzsaw, but so's their schedule. A little bit like Baylor. They have a really, really difficult schedule early on. They have Wade Taylor, the 4th, one of the best scoring returners in the country. It'll be interesting to see how this team forms and shapes around Buzz Williams' culture and mentality. I believe this is a couple of years in for him at Texas A&M, and I think he's going to be ready to deliver. I think he's a really good coach. Creighton, Pete, we're going to go to Creighton. We like Creighton. We like Coach McDermott. We like what they do. They're reloading a little bit, but they still bring back Kalkbrenner, and you're going to see Coach McDermott make wonders around that. They've got some other really good pieces, and I didn't get into any of the portal stuff about who hit the portal well, who didn't hit the portal well. When I did look at it, I'm just not reporting on it. But Creighton hit the portal pretty good if you really want to know the truth. I'm going to go with Purdue in the 15th spot. Although they lose Zach Edey and they have been a top 3 team for a good period of time now, I mean, the big guy was an absolute human double-double. I think they're going to miss that. They're bringing in a new 7'3", 7'4" guy, Daniel Jacobson. I think it's going to take some time for him to be a dominant player, but their guard play is really, really good, and I think Braden Smith could be one of the best in the country. All right, Indiana, I moved them up a good bit here, Pete. Nobody had them in the top 25 last year. I bounced them up. I think they have it this year. I really do. I think they have the right combination of things. Again, you're putting pieces together, so it's never going to be easy to delineate and to describe exactly what's going to happen in the future because they don't have a past together. But right now, the future, at least on paper, looks very, very good at Indiana. That's why I moved them up. Moving them ahead of Kentucky, that'll really tick the Kentucky fans off. I think Coach Pope's going to do really, really good stuff. In terms of X's and O's, I love these BYU teams, especially on offense. I just think it's going to take a little time for them to adjust to the fact that they were absolutely, had kidnappings going on down there, and those guys are all wound up at Arkansas. So the entire roster was blown apart. Nothing he could do about that. I think it'll take a little bit of time. Obviously, they have plenty of NIL assets, but it's still going to take time. Still going to take a little time. But I think in terms of coaching, and in terms of him being a former player there, I kind of like that scenario for them. I went with Arkansas in the 18th spot. They could certainly be higher, but again, I've talked about their coaching staff a little bit. I've had some knocks on them, and you look at certain guys. I know a guy in our business, who was a head coach And he gave me the scenario that it was about closing the door and keeping the people, the street people, out of the program. And he said he paid a dear price for that because now he's an assistant coach again and lost his job. But the other guy, that we're talking about, he kicked the door wide open and allowed all of that to go on in his program. And then the messaging was very, very clear. You get rewarded for that. You get the best jobs in the country for that. You get almost any job you want if you want it. And that's the sad part about this. Virginia at 19. I think they're going to have trouble here because they've lost a couple of good pieces, but I think they're having trouble with the NIL arrangement as well, too. Some schools are moving at a better clip than others with this thing, for sure. Marquette, 20, could go higher. Could go higher. I want to say that because I did the top 25 before I did the differential numbers. When I looked at Marquette's differential numbers, they're pretty good. I do have them as a number 2 team, I think, in the Big East behind UConn, but right now you'll see there's kind of a gap there between UConn and really where everybody else is.
Yeah.
And you lost Tyler Kolek. You lost Oso Ighodaro. There are some significant losses at Marquette. They do have some good pieces to make it up. Good recruiting going on down there. They're looking at a little more program integrity, I think, than other people are. But right now, it's year in and year out. It could be a little bit difficult until they get going. St. Mary's, they're unbelievable out there in the West. Again, they're going to be one of the beneficiaries of some of these West teams moving east. They're going to be a beneficiary of that because they're staying out there in the West. This is a team I think that people are missing on this year, Pete, and I'm going to stand here. I'm going to say it right now. Kevin Willard, Maryland, they're going to be a lot better this year. Julian Reese and Derek Queen are going to be the best one of the best 1-2 punches up front. They have good guard play, and it just goes to show that it's hard sometimes as a fan base to sit there and watch your team grow. Losing is growing. That's the unfortunate part about it. But if you're patient and you wait and you pick the right spot, I think if Indiana and Maryland are both in that same realm where they've been patient with their coaches, and now I think they're going to reap the reward for that. I think Indiana and Maryland are poised with Rutgers to really rise in the Big Ten. Utah State, love this program, love the way they do their stuff. I'm going to go Florida, and you can't count out Illinois. But again, I watch when people get muscled. And when you got muscled to go to Kansas State, I thought that was a weird kind of muscle as well. It's one thing if Alabama comes in and muscles LIU. Obviously, LIU can't fight with that. There's no question about that. But when I see something that goes like this and that, it makes me go home. And I was a little surprised about that. I really, really was. Very, very surprised about it. All right, Pete. We're cooking with gasoline here today, and we are just going to keep rolling right into our NCAA. A little bit of fish here for you. We wanted to give you, for the first time, we wanted to give you, in the zone, top 25 players in the country right now coming up for this year. That means we had to take everybody who was returning and add in this unbelievably deep, talented and powerful freshman class that's coming up here, which is also going to add some serious impact into next year's draft. I'm so happy and excited right now, Pete, about next year's draft. I'm having trouble containing myself. That's how excited I am about next year's draft already. This is June we have to wait till. Okay, but I wanted to put together a list of the top 25 players in the entire country for you right now and put in the freshmen and tell you where we think they stock in, because there's some very good returning players, some very, very good returning players. But there are also some really, really exciting, terrific young freshmen coming into the NCAA right now. It's a little bit like the NBA almost, a small microcosm of the NBA. Go figure. You started paying guys and you started to look like the NBA. So it's a little bit of that, though, where you have a lot of good players that are at the top, that are finishing their career, trying to get drafted as well. But then you have that young group of great, great players that are coming into this freshman class that's as deep as any I've seen in a really, really, really long time. I'm going to go through it with you. In our number one spot, and this is number one and number two, you can flip a coin here, all right, because I really had a hard time doing it. I only picked R.J. Davis just based on his longevity and his ability to really sustain at North Carolina. I picked him as our number one player in the country right now. Averaged over 20 points a game last year. There's going to be a lot of weight on R.J. Davis's shoulders this year because North Carolina has two very, very interesting freshman prospects coming in with Ian Jackson and also with Drake Powell. But they have Elliot Cadeau and they have R.J. Davis. That's a good backcourt. Those forwards are young and mercurial. But if they're as good as everybody says they are, I think North Carolina could be good. That's going to allow R.J. Davis some freedom to do his thing and also to get a little bit of more freedom of movement as well. If teams can double him, if teams can shadow him, if teams can put extra defensive attention on him, his numbers are going to go down. But if there's enough out there that can space this, I think R.J. Davis could emerge as the Wooden Award winner, as the best player in the country. Mark Sears is going to battle it. They both averaged over 20 a game last year. And as the same thing I just said about R.J. Davis, you have to see how this blend is going to work with Alabama as well. Big man coming in, Big Cliff is coming in from Rutgers. Is that going to work? I think it does. But they were also a three-point bombing unit last year. They were very perimeter-driven, Alabama. They shot as many three-point shots as anybody in the country. Does this dynamic change things for them? We talked about it last week's show. Does this change things for them because they're going to have a bigger lineup? Grant Nelson and Omorie starting together is going to not be as fluid as a European style as they had last year. But we're going to look at that. Sears is terrific. We call the Alabama operation now Sears and Roebuck because he's just running the show there for a good long time, and he is an absolute terrific lead guard. Cooper Flagg, I put him in third. Everybody is saying that he'll be the number one pick overall. Everybody's saying this in next year's draft. I'm going to reserve my time. I'm going to wait. I want to see everything, but he's been really, really good from what I've seen. He's Christian Laettner, as I said, but a better version of that right now because he has more skill. He has a lot more offensive skill than Christian Laettner ever did, although Christian Laettner was very effective and great player. I just think they're similar, but, man, this young man has put it all together. From the state of Maine, went to IMG in Florida. They had Liam McNeely on the same team, the same high school team. They were beating people by like 100 points. I want to see what happens now because I'm counting this Duke roster as a little bit discounted. I want to see what happens there. Wade Taylor, the fourth, Texas A&M. He's the third guard on this list that averaged over 20 points a game last year. And everybody thinks, oh, I'm going to go in and I'm going to average 20. There's a handful of guys that average 20 points a game. That's a really, really good accomplishment in college basketball. The game is shorter. The defenses are better. The shot selection is you're not getting as many shots as you were if you were an NBA star. Wade Taylor, the fourth, again, right there. And then you close out the five with Caleb Love. That's four unbelievable guards returning with a ton of NCAA experience under their belt. Any one of those five players could be the Wooden Award winner. Number 6, VJ Edgecombe. You're going to love this guy. He's going to Baylor. They have Northshore Armir. They have Jeremy Roach. Watch out for Baylor, folks. Watch out. The only knock on them is their schedule is really rough, and they're in a conference that can just knock you up. But they're young, talented, and Edgecombe, I love watching them play. Johnny Broome, 7th. And this is how good I think this freshman class is. Johnny Broome's going to be a top 15 pick in the NBA, if you ask me. All right? And now you got two people who never played in the NCAA yet that are listed above him. And that's something that says a lot for this freshman class. That's where everybody thinks they are. Number 8, Hunter Dickinson from Kansas. A little high for me, but I'm going to go with it. It's Kansas. He's the big guy. He's been their focal point. I think that's also been part of their problem a little bit. All right, Tamim Lipsey, the young man I just mentioned, Iowa State. In that category of guards, this class that we're looking at for 25 of players has more guards than Buckingham Palace right now, and it's unbelievable. Tamim Lipsey, throw in another one. He is unbelievable. That Iowa State team's very good too. Number 10, Ryan Kalkbrenner. We just mentioned him from Creighton. They're going to build around him. He's going to be the guy that they're going to build around in this year. They had other pieces last year. They had Trey Alexander. They had Baylor Sherman. They had some really, really good pieces around. But now Kalkbrenner is going to be his year. He's going to have to do it. And I see him in the top 10. Alex Caraban from Connecticut, first-team All-American. The folks out there are believing it. I think Caraban is the absolute best glue guy you could have in a really long time. Terrific, terrific basketball player. Number 12, and I think this will be because he's with St. John's. Rick Pitino is a guards coach. Kadari Richmond, transfer from Seton Hall. He's coming across the George Washington Bridge, and he's going to make it happen for St. John's in the Garden. I think he's going to have a good year, but when you look, if we get to St. John's' differential numbers, you're going to see why I ain't just that excited about St. John's this year. I'm just not, I think they're going to be okay, but I don't see them being a whole lot better than they were last year just because you added Kadari Richmond. Dylan Harper in the 13th spot. I put him there. He's at Rutgers. He's a freshman. He can shoot the lights out. Coleman Hawkins is the gentleman I was talking about previously where Illinois got muscled by Kansas State. Coleman Hawkins is terrific. He's going to walk into Kansas State and help them immediately. But I was surprised that Illinois, again, got muscled, on the NIL stuff. I'm a little shocked at that. 15, Braden Smith, Purdue. Mentioned him earlier when we talked about Purdue. One of the best guards in the country. He's a little bit outside that first echelon of guards, though. This class is really solid with guards. Let's go to another guard, though. John-Uel Davis. He's going to be teamed up with John Calipari. You'll remember John-Uel Davis from the Florida Atlantic University teams that had the huge run, had the unbelievable go into the Final Four. And right now he's going to pair up with some really, really talented players at Arkansas, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But he's a great player. 17, Oumar Ballo. Oumar Ballo, I love him. Indiana, I think he's the best big man in the class. Indiana scooped him up. Again, Arizona to Indiana. I don't know how Arizona gets muscled, and he's been there a while, and he's 7 foot, and he's one of the best big men in the country. You got to pay him, and you got to hold on to him. 18, Ace Bailey, Rutgers. Rutgers has Bailey and Harper in a tandem of freshmen. Unbelievable. Unbelievable how good they are. It was a great, great get for Rutgers. Coach Peichel and staff, unbelievable pickup. Let's see if they have enough to go with it. All right, but they have a great home arena there in New Jersey too. I think they got it going on there. Jeremy Roach, 19. Again, how does Duke lose this guy to Baylor? Another question where I'm looking at it, shaking my head and going, muscled. They got muscled. Mackenzie Mbako, Indiana. Keep him out of the drive-through, Indiana, and he's going to be fine. The Hoosiers are going to love him in his sophomore year. He's going to be teamed up with Oumar Ballo. He's going to be teamed up with Keenan Carlisle. They're going to have an exciting team in Indiana. If they can pull it all together. Vlad Golden, I got him in 21. A lot of people sleeping on my big guy Vlad. I like Vlad, and I like his game. I think he's following his coach. He was at Florida Atlantic with John-Uel Davis. He's 7 foot, really, really good around the basket, has great hands, can do a lot of good stuff, and he's following his coach to Michigan now. I expect big things out of him. Robbie Avila, okay, Indiana State, unbelievable big man, 6'10", great hands, good post moves, tough to guard because he's big and wide, and now he's going to follow his coach into the A-10 and go to St. Louis. So that's going to put a punch into the A-10 because I would, again, this draft is going to be very deep. I'd have to look at everything and tie it up tight. But Robbie Avila is probably somewhere near the first round. If you get him in the second round, I think you're getting a pretty good pick. So that's how deep this draft is going to be. Again, Northshore Amir, Baylor from Miami. How does Miami get muscled by Baylor for Northshore Amir? I don't know. Maybe some of this is just change of scenery. Maybe some of this is personality driven. I don't really know. But what I do know is that these are really, really good big men. And that's got to be, if you're in an NIL situation, you have to build your pyramid accordingly around that because there's a whole lot of guards out there. But there's not a lot of really, really good big men. They're an absolute commodity. And so your NIL approach has to reflect that, if you ask me. All right. But I love Avila. I love Golden. Those are guys you're going to get in the late first round. They're going to be good pros.
You're seeing with the portal and NIL that players are going to the best fit for them, not for the team.
It's certainly the only place I'm hearing a little bit different than that is Baylor, where VJ Edgecombe said he went there because he loved the coaching staff. I'm hearing that in Baylor. I think maybe they're trying to take a different approach out there. But I'm going to go here 24 and 25. Solomon Johnson, Connecticut. I'm going to give you his name early, folks. I like him a lot. You haven't seen him, and the reason you haven't seen him is because they've had so many other great players in front of him. It's his turn. You're going to see it. He's going to maybe be the best big man in the entire Big East this year. I'm going to give it to you right now. Solomon Johnson, remember the name. And then again, another big, Cliff Amoria. There's a lot of bigs, a lot of guards. This top 25, when I did it, I was very surprised. Let me give you a couple honorable mentions, Pete, because I really had trouble capping it at 25. I love Julian Reese at Maryland. He's going to be a big-time player this year for the Maryland Terps. Tucker DeVries from West Virginia. He's following his dad there. Always nice when your dad is the coach. You get the first look at the first shot. KJ Adams, Kansas, going to have a great year, I believe, out there. Cam Matthews, keep an eye on this young man. Mississippi State, just getting going with their program a little bit out there. Chris Jans, tough league, really, really difficult place to recruit. Mississippi's not, absolutely chock full of basketball talent, but I would say Cam Matthews, keep an eye on him because he has an NBA-type game right now, an NBA-type body right now. I'm going to throw one out for you here. LJ Cryer at Houston. He won't be crying, but everybody else is going to be. He's coming back to Houston. He'll be one of the top players in the country. I'm going to also throw this out there for you, Pete. This is an Atlantic 10 special. I'm really high on this young man, and I'm kind of high on him for sticking around as well. But Darren Stevenson at George Washington, who's hurt a little bit last year, stays healthy this year. You're going to see a great, great player down there. Unbelievable. All right, I want to get to... We have some stuff here that I have for, there's two people I like. I like Torvik a lot. Bart Torvik does good stuff, numerical, very data-driven. But also, I love Jeff Borzello, writes for ESPN. And what I like about Borzello is he's like back in the old days when you used to have one of those real brainy kids, and you'd get him to do your homework for you, and he would do your homework for you, and then you could just go through it and try to make sense of it, And so that's what we're going to close with a little bit today. We're going to walk you through two different leagues that are very prominently discussed on this show, very prominently discussed on just about every show. They're power conferences, and they're eastbound driven. And next week we'll get to some of the other conferences as well. We'll get to the SEC, the Big Ten, and we'll get to the Big 12 as well. But we wanted to walk you through just a little bit of this to show you some of the staggering nature of what's going on in college basketball right now. And when we broke it down like this last year, we were almost 100% spot on. Now, you're going to see this year, maybe it's intensifying. The numbers, the gaps are growing. And so you're going to see this intensify where it's going to be very, very difficult for you to keep your program moving in the right direction when you have these numbers. Because last year, our numbers, when we looked at them, which was we look at it from who departed, how many points per game left, who did you retain, how many points are coming back. We're not looking at anybody who hasn't done anything in your program. Of course, there'll be variances for that. Some people did very well in the portal. Other people haven't done quite as well. But we left that out of the variance only to discuss program integrity, who's coming back, who's leaving, and you're going to be shocked at some of these numbers. Boston College, number one. Our friends out there, I wanted to thank them also for the clinic that they did last week. I attended that clinic. I thought it was really, really good clinic, and I was appreciative of them for doing that. Coach Martin from UMass was there, Coach Gates from Boston College, and we also had Dave Paulson from Holy Cross was there. Really, really good stuff. I enjoyed it. But Boston College, bad news, folks. I really enjoyed your clinic, but you got bad news on the horizon. Depart, 65.8 points per game.
Wow.
They retained 13. Net differential, 52.8 on the negative side. California, you were 13 and 19 last year. You decided to jump into the ACC. For what reason? I don't know. But The real bad news for California is you're departing 84.3 of your point production for last year, and you're retaining 1.5. You are the new Notre Dame. Find
Kelly Clarkson!
Find California on the south side of the ACC standings this year for sure.
That's the ripping sound when all those points went away.
That's 82.8 on the negative side, minus 82.8. No way to make that up. No way to make that up. I don't care who you brought in. Clemson, 52 on the leave side, but then they've got 30.7 retained, which is a pretty good number.
Yeah.
They're still net negative 21, but 21.5.
That's better than, that's better than a lot.
As you're seeing, it's relative, right?
Yeah.
It's like my economics professor. We're going to have to bell curve everybody on this thing because it's really, really, everybody got a 25 on the exam out of 200. Okay, well, we're going to bell curve everybody. 25 is now an A. Okay, well, this looks like an A right here. Yeah. You have 21% back there. We'll give you an A. All right, here's another one, Pete. You're going to surprise you. Duke, the Dukies, everybody's favorite or not so favorite, depending on who you are. Departing 67.1, retaining 18.2.
What?
Net differential 48.9. This is why they're having problems. You lost 9 players.
Yeah.
Why are they leaving Duke? And where are they going? Where are they going? Florida State, depart 64.3. You retain 23.6. Their coach is in his 70s. How long is he going to continue this? How long does he want to keep doing this? Every year you're dumping out 64 points, and you got to go searching. You got to go looking for other people's players. And it's got to be daunting.
Yeah, how hard is
some
that?
Of these coaches.
Yeah.
It's got to be daunting. It's got to be terrible that every single year, and you don't build up relationships that way. All of these coaches that I'm talking about, some of them good guys, some of them bad guys, some of them would sell their mom down the river for a 6'10" kid who could dunk the ball. No question about that. But all in all, they did enjoy the relationships that they had with their players. And now that's just a mess. Now it's just a mess. Georgia Tech, 46.9, but they retained 41.1. All right, so their net is 5.8, minus 5.8, but not bad. Not bad. Damian Stoudemire, their coach, unbelievable third year now. They got to be ready. Second, third year, they got to be ready. He's got a chance. He's got a chance.
Yeah, that means that there's some program integrity there because they're able to replace what they're losing.
And he just got there a little while ago, and that's not easy when you first get there to figure this whole thing out and then start moving pieces around.
Yeah, sure.
And what you're finding also is some of these numbers where the numbers are very glaring is new coach. New coach comes in, takes over, and tells everybody, get out. Just get out. You're not needed anymore.
Wow.
And that's how you get these zeros. That's how you get down on returning 5.8. That's how you get to these crazy numbers. I'll give you one right here. Now that we're talking crazy numbers, Louisville, the Cardinals, depart 85.3. Mm-hmm. They retain 0.0.
Here we go.
Where's the kaboom? There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
They don't have a semblance of movement in the right direction here.
That's a recipe for disaster, no?
It's a new coach. This is a brand new coach. I think they'll get it going. I think he'll be, I think they're pointed. This is Pat Kelsey, the guy who told UMass goodbye. This is the same guy who took the job at UMass, turned around, and walked out the door. He was at Wofford, I believe, and at College of Charleston. Did very well there. This is a step into the big time. He has the right budget, from what I'm told.
Yeah, but does that inspire confidence that you took a job and walked away from it?
Oh,
maybe that's why the players are leaving.
But it's all a mess. But right now, what you've done is validated it.
Right.
The coaches used to get some heat and go because they used to say, well, why does the coach get to leave anytime he wants and the player doesn't get to transfer? He's got to sit for a year. Very valid argument.
Yep.
Very valid argument. They're trying to clean some of that up right now, but for years the coaches have been able to do whatever they wanted. But when you're seeing it now, the underside of this, we talked about this, Pete,
yeah,
is they're just telling everybody get out. So whether you wanted to leave or not, maybe you loved the school. Maybe you just wanted to stay 4 years in one place. Like God forbid that could happen with one of our athletes anymore, that they would actually do 4 years at the same school, matriculate, graduate, and spend their time as an alumni of that university knowing they spent their entire time on their beloved campus in the arms of the alma mater, the loving mother. I don't get it, but when the cash register rings, you see things that go on. But Louisville, 85-0. It's going to be a long, but I would say that'll stop now that they've got the new coach in. I think he'll get them moving. And I think Louisville probably finally made the right move as far as the coaching hire. Miami, North Shore Armir, Wilga Poplar, the guys are going in and out, and I did not see enough on the return side. Jaleel Bethia coming in as a freshman, awful lot of pressure on him. It's going to help his NBA draft status, I think, because his numbers could get elevated. But I think Miami, 55.7, and 29.4 return. They're net 26. Not the worst thing in the world, but they just don't have a whole lot of players there that you'd sit there and say, well, these guys are going to be really good. They have some guys that are returning, decent, but I think, they're going to have to do a much, much better job on defense this year, Miami, than they have in the last couple of years. They're just going to have to do better on defense, if you ask me. I've watched their teams closely, and they really click on offense and do some great stuff, but they can't just be totally uninterested and disinterested in the defensive end, which is what I've seen from them. North Carolina State, 55-28. They're a net 26.8 minus. North Carolina, 41.8 gone, 41.8 returns. Most of that loaded into R.J. Davis's column with 21-point-plus returning there. He's got 21 of the 41 returning, but they're at a net zero. They're in a net zero. That's why people are excited about their team, and they're adding some good freshman talent. Notre Dame, here it is, Pete. This is the flip side. All right, this is what happens now. You'll probably see these same numbers next year with Louisville. I'm hoping, for their sake. But they depart 8.7, Notre Dame, when last year their number was somewhere in the 70s, 60s. And now they're retaining 56.3 for a whopping 47.6. Ring it again, Pete. They are the number one number that we've seen so far in retention, bringing it back for this year. So you have a new coaching staff. At the first year, let's get them out, let's take our lumps early. Now you see they're going to be retaining. But there's also that good saying that goes on in the coaching business. The good news is everybody's back.
Yeah, right.
The bad news is everybody's back. Pittsburgh departs 41.8. They retained 38.6 for a net 3.2 negative. But I think Pittsburgh's going to be pretty good this year. I have them in the top 3 of the ACC for sure. SMU, welcome to the ACC. Andy Enfield coming in with the team, 53.9, 24 point on the flip side. Their net minus 29.9, almost 30 points. Stanford coming into the ACC as well, going to be a little bit like Cal, but they have a little bit better numbers. They're 54.8 on the way out, and they're 23.1 on the way back. Their net is 31.7 negative, but they have 23 points returning. They lost Keenan Carlisle. They lost some pieces, though, and they've lost Harrison Ingram the year before to North Carolina. It's been rough there at Stanford. They have a new coaching staff. Again, these aren't bad numbers for a new coaching staff, and I think you're going to see Coach do a really good job there, and I think they'll solidify and make that program a lot more solid than it has been. Syracuse, they're departing 49.2, and they get 32.4 back. They have a very, very talented freshman on the way in, but they're still minus 16.8. But not bad for Coach Red Autry, keeping that program integrity. I like what he's done with the program, too. We're going to hustle here, Pete. Virginia, 38 on the departure side, 29 returning. They come net 9-0. That's why people think they can compete. I just think they've lost a lot of pieces recently, and I think their pack line has kind of been figured out. Virginia Tech, 77.9. And they retain 10.9, 67.0. It's going to be a long, long year in Blacksburg. And this is what we're looking at also, Pete, what we talked about with Kenny last week, the great schism in the NBA. You have the haves and the have-nots. Now these power conferences are exactly the same same way, same build. They have tons of people with all the players doing really, really good, and then you got a bunch of people that don't have much. All right, so Virginia Tech, I'm putting them down as don't have much. Wake Forest, they depart 38. They retain 47.6. Coach is doing a great job down there.
Yeah.
9.6. Pete, we're out of time. I'll save the Big East for next week. All right? So, Pete, it was awesome to have you back. Give us a quick Nashville story before we close.
Had a great time at Dolly's Pigeon Forge Stampede Show. They feed over 2,000 people, full meals, and you get to watch a rodeo show on a stage in front of you that's a horse.
Wow.
It's a horse stage. I mean, it's like a rodeo half circle. They do a full riding show. They do comedy, music. It's pretty cool, actually. Nice little dinner show.
I saw some of that on Facebook that looked absolutely really cool.
And a moonshine
very
train
cool.
run. That was fun, too.
All right, Pete, we're out of time.
Yeah?
Unbelievable. When this show starts, I look at the clock, and then I look up and I go, my God, we're not going to finish. We're out of time. But I do want to, again, thank all of our viewers, all of the people. One of the things I like to do after the show on Thursday is when we put it up to social media and we see our numbers start to move. And we've been very fortunate and blessed to have a really good group of zoners who are following us and moving that needle for us. Keep sharing it. Keep pushing it out there, because now that Woj is gone from the NBA analyst spot, I just would like to let ESPN know that I'm highly available right now for casual dating. Have a great week, folks. We'll see you next week.